All right, great. Thank you, Sherwin. Good day to everyone, and shalom to my friends in Israel that are joining us today. My name is Eric Jankowski. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Matrix Food Technologies. I had the good fortune of being able to work in Israel a few years ago with the technology directorate of the Israeli Defense Forces in Palmachim. Because of that, we understand that food security is an important issue, not just to Israel, but to the world. And our Dr. Heidi Coia is going to be sharing with you some of the technologies that we've developed that could assist both Israel and the world in ensuring food security going forward. If you didn't know, Matrix Food Technologies is the designer and manufacturer of three-dimensional nanofiber scaffolds from plant-based materials that are animal component free. And with that, I will turn it over to to my colleague and to our Director of Innovation and Product Development, Dr. Heidi Coia.
Heidi, make sure you're unmuted.
Thank you. I lost my window the moment I shared my screen, so thank you for your patience while that transfer happened. Is there a visual on my presentation now?
Yes.
Great. Well, good morning, everyone. And as Eric mentioned, yes, I'm Heidi Coia. I'm our Director of Product Development and Innovation here at Matrix Food Technologies. And I'm really excited to talk to this audience. I had the opportunity recently to visit Tel Aviv and give a talk to the Food and Agricultural Organization there at Israel in Tel Aviv, where they were discussing a lot of the requirements that would be necessary from a regulatory perspective on this cultivated meat industry, as it's a new and developing industry. And there's limited regulations. I think it was a very important time for individuals in the industry to meet up with the regulatory bodies to understand what it is that they're going to be regulating, and also kind of in a cyclical way inform the researchers about how we can best provide the information that will be valuable to them. So I'm really excited to have this information about what Matrix Food Technology does in this field, because we have a unique spot where we're enabling technology. So I feel that although the field is growing and expanding at a rapid rate, trying to get a hybrid or other three-dimensional cell culture products onto market, I like to think that we're the ones that have to be even farther ahead of the curve when it comes to this technology and the regulatory perspective, because we are going to be the ones that provide the basis for these cells and products to grow. When I told my brother that I was giving this talk and the type of people that would be on this talk, he said, well, go make a leg, which similar to, when you're on a theater presentation, go break a leg. So I guess in that way, that's what we're trying to do as an enabling technology. We want to make sure that the companies that are making these cuts of meats and these complex type of structures that are going to provide the products for this industry are founded on a strong basis, which is, arguably a Matrix F.T microcarrier. So like Eric mentioned, we have customized plant-based edible scaffolding and microcarriers that help the cultivated meat industry grow their cells. Eric touched on this a little bit. Our vision here at Matrix is to drive the cultivated meat industry into a competitive scale with a competitive slaughtered meat industry or conventional meat industry by providing this enabling technology so that these companies interested in growing these textured and I guess you could say complex 3D meat structures can benefit from having these type of scaffolds and microcarriers available to them. And so what we want to do is be able to allow the industry to scale. That is one of the major concerns in this field. We can make small things. Cells are notoriously finicky, in particular in their growth conditions. There's a lot of great technology coming out of the median growth factor industry that is providing additional opportunities to make it possible to grow cells in larger amounts that have been seen before. But with that, we need to be able to provide the scaffolds for adherent cells to grow and mature and really provide that texture and protein profile that is going to be familiar to the consumer. And so we do this by providing these customized plant-based 100% edible scaffolds and microcarriers, as well as R&D services. As we're all in the industry new, developing many startups, we found that it's important to be able to provide these services as well in case if a lab has limited personnel or laboratory capabilities. We can also provide services to do some in-house testing as well on different customizable products, or even if a customer can send cells to us and then we can run some experiments in-house. So I'll dive into a little bit more of our R&D services in a little bit, but first I'll talk about our different types of products that we have available. Our first one is the scaffolding. So this is, you would see this maybe in a larger sheet type of scenario, more similar to maybe growing cells on a flask or a collagen-coated surface that cell culture person might be familiar with. And this will provide kind of a little bit more of 3D texture and alignment that might be necessary in the particular product that a person or company is interested in growing. We also have our microbeads, and these might also be familiar to someone in cell culture that's worked with collagen beads or other things to grow adherent cells in a bioreactor or other suspension cell environment. Along with the microbeads, we also have microcarriers, and these come in different shapes and textures and forms. And this is just kind of the overall group that summarizes the carriers in general. So they can be round, they can be textured, they can be fibrous. These are not to scale intentionally. If additional details on our different materials, sizes, and such can be discussed in greater detail upon signing appropriate paperwork, so that we can divulge all kinds of information that may be more or less proprietary. But I wanted to give examples of what some of these surfaces and textures and shapes look like, and I'll have some data on the cells following. So first, to dive into our products. So every single one of those ones that I just showed is 100% edible. I've eaten a few myself. We've done some internal tests to see how they would respond in a hybrid type of environment where there's you could say a meaty base with some of our edible microcarriers incorporated into that. So understanding how they behave in the type of environments where they will ultimately be present for an end user is important to us to understand. But at the bare bones of it, they are 100% edible. They're plant-based and animal component free. So this is also unique in the microcarrier space. Many times transitioning from a traditional collagen, fibronectin, animal protein based environment that the cells are familiar with and like to attach to into a plant-based animal component-free environment is a challenge. So although there may be items in the market that may be plant-based, they may also be missing an animal component-free situation that us at Matrix are happy that we can incorporate, because that's the goal of the field, is to really reduce the impact on the environment and the slaughtered meat industry by not using these animal products. So along with that, our products are also customizable. So we have worked with customers and on different coatings that a customer may believe may work better, or one that they've worked with in-house that has worked well with their particular cell type, incorporating that with our microcarriers and really getting something that benefits both parties and is a unique customized product. All of our ingredients are grass, which is important. You might have seen the recent news. I know my email inbox is just flooded with information of the recent Upside Farms FDA clearance situation. So their products were cleared as grass status through the FDA. A long way to go before it makes it through the USDA and other regulatory agencies. But along with that, I just wanted to highlight that we're maintaining course until the regulations are available, that we're maintaining GRAS ingredients in our portfolio in order to make sure that we are similarly prepared for these type of regulations. So what these microcarriers do is they enable cell mass generation, proliferation, and even differentiation of these cells. And they can also be used in 3D printing. So based on their size, shape, and ability to dissolve or not dissolve, or to not clog a 3D printer, we have microcarriers developed in-house that we're sure will work well in 3D printing applications, as that's popular in the field as well, to really provide a structure that the cells will grow on. We also have the porous fibers and textured spheres, like I mentioned. They come in a number of different formats that, again, make them very useful to customize for a particular customer's goals and interests. As there's a number of different meat products out there. There's an endless number of cells and media combinations. So being sure to capture the optimized properties or a variety of properties that might suit a customer is going to be very important in their success. And so the types of customization that we can do on these products could include the format. So again, this could be scaffold, this could be beads, this could be a textured bead, it could be a fibrous microcarrier, the surface treatment. We have a proprietary coating in-house that has worked successfully with our testing, and we sent a few of these proprietary coated microcarriers out to a number of customers to see how they work in their hands and with their different cells. We also can customize them, again, like I mentioned, based on what a customer may be interested in. If they already have an in-house coating or surface treatment that they'd like to use that they think will work well, and then we can incorporate that into our microcarriers as well. And this can be a treatment that's similar to tissue culture treated cell culture plates, dishes, and flasks, or it can be more complex extracellular matrix like proteins and peptides. Also, the size of the microcarriers, we've been able to manipulate in a way that will be most beneficial to bioreactor environments or suspension cell environments, so that they're consistent and also can provide information quantitatively, such as the number of cells per microcarrier and different types of information that help understand the contribution of the biomass of the microcarrier and the cells to an overall final product. The composition, so we have a number of different proteins that we can incorporate, different plant proteins that we can incorporate into our microcarriers. And so we have three top ones that we use now, soy, pea, and corn, with other ones on our radar as they become more readily available. Chickpea protein, I know, was talked about at a recent New Harvest conference, and I'm excited to see what other type of prolamines and proteins become available on the market, because I think we'll be ready to incorporate them into our microcarriers to understand how they can further benefit the field and also promote cell attachment and different textures and nutritional capabilities within the microcarrier. And then alignment, so you can see on the bottom right panel, we have some random on the left and more aligned microfibers and one of our scaffolds to really provide an environment that again, a customer might be interested in. If they have muscle cells, they might want to see them aligned and performing kind of in union together along the surface of a scaffold, but also there might be a reason why they would want this randomized pattern, and that can promote a different type of cell protein expression, and also may be able to promote different types of cell growth depending on the cell type, or even if there's a mixed variety of cells, such as I know mixing the fat and the muscle cells have been an important component in the field in order to really make sure that the texture and the taste profiles are consistent with what is seen in conventional or traditional slaughtered meat. We use a variety of different techniques here at Matrix to make these different scaffolds and microcarriers, and that includes electrospinning, and extrusion. And in little pictures to the side, you can see what some of these products look like for each of the processes. So they might be thin and fibrous, they might be more bead-like, or they might even be fibrous, almost like noodles, which provides a texture for the cells to grow in a more 3D way. And with that, they each have unique features and functions that really make these, again, customizable to the different type of environment and cell types that an investigator may be interested in. And this can include modifying the uniformity, the stability, the different features, the fiber orientation, and the feature sizes of these different microcarriers to really optimize their performance. I talked a little bit about the challenges within the regulatory environment when there's limited regulations present for such a new industry. But what we are trying to do at Matrix is make sure that when we are producing a product that we are keeping food safety in mind. So although right now we have an R&D cell culture product, turning this into a manufacturing scale food ingredient is high on our priority list. And right now we've enacted things such as just having a dedicated storage space. We have allergens labeled and separated. We've been working to understand our shipping components. We have a little graph there where we can drop we have a temperature detector and understanding how many ice packs we need and getting these samples shipped on cold temperatures across the sea or wherever they need to go in order to reach it to customers' hands in a food safe and regulated way. So that's something we put a lot of time and effort into understanding how we can get these into customers' hands without compromising the integrity of the product, because we really want to see them perform well. We see them perform really well in-house. We wouldn't send them out if they didn't. So we're hoping to see similar results as soon as they make it into a new customer's hands. And again, we've had a number of customers already with a variety of different cell types that have seen cell attachment on these different microcarriers that we've worked with to date. Also in-house sterility and sterilization techniques, so understanding what a food industry would require is something that we're keeping on our radar and running internal testing to make sure that our sterilization and sterility testing is current with FDA requirements. And so once the specifics for the cultivated meat industry become available, we'll have a much better chance of being able to fit those requirements if we've already been running this in-house testing up to date. The training of staff members is also important. So there's a picture of a few of our Matrix technology. We call ourselves matrices, but the Matrix employees working in the clean room there, just making sure that our products are being produced and maintained and evaluated and packaged in the best way possible to ensure that there's no contamination or other things when these samples go out. So along with all the internal R&D and prep work that we do to prepare these microcarriers for this environment, we also provide these R&D services, which is really, I think, an important and unique part of Matrix technology that has been really exciting, at least for me, to work with, is that we get to work with such a variety of companies. There's 130 or so on the market, and we're very familiar with all of them. We're constantly up to date on the news and seeing what every company is up to. And again, as an enabling technology, it kind of gives us this unique opportunity to kind of to talk with each and every one of them as many as we can get a hold of, to understand their needs, their challenges, their bottlenecks, and see if there's really a way that we can help them with these challenges. There's a lot of academic labs making microcarriers and understanding different surface treatments that may be valuable. But as a company that is moving into manufacturing of these, that hopefully on a larger scale to meet the growing demand of this field, we'll have the capability to do that. I think more so than many others on the market. So what an R&D service might look like is coming up first with the scaffold. So understanding what the material might be that a customer might be interested in. If they're concerned with allergens, we may have a lower allergen protein or peptide available that they may be interested in. Maybe there's a surface coating we can recommend over another in order to really optimize a situation where they'll have the most success. They might have size requirements. They might, again, want to see alignment or randomized growth patterns, and then understanding loading density. So many of the cells on the market today, they've been carefully selected or curated or extracted, and sometimes not as many cells are available to run these tests as we'd like with the immortalized cell line that at least I'm familiar with, being in the cancer research previously, and and gene therapy world, these cells they grow forever, and as long as there's limited genetic drift, you'll be able to continue to grow and proliferate cells from an original bank forever. Some of the cultivated meat cells are a little more specific than that, and might require lower loading densities and more creative approaches to cell seeding and growth, particularly on our 3D microcarrier environment than what is traditionally done. So with that, we also provide recommendations on these cell culture methods, depending on the cell types. It might be fat, might be muscle, might come from a fish, a pork, bovine, any type of variety of cells. We want to understand how these perform on our microcarriers, and with that, provide recommendations for the seeding methods, the density, understanding if these cells will be grown in static or suspension environments, so that we can really provide a microcarrier that will be most optimal for the desired outcome. And with that, internally, we can run evaluations such as understanding the live dead cell ratio, the number of cells per microcarrier. We can run electron microscopy and to understand the surface texture on the cells, fluorescent staining, really getting some imaging of the adherence of these cells and their ability to really spread, become confluent, and established on these microcarriers. So if someone is interested in our particular products, we are in development of a sample kit, which we're validating. We've had a few runs on it, and have just sent a set out as to a beta tester client just last week. And what this consists of is 3 different plant proteins in 4 different formats, such as a microbead, both a wet and a dry format, microsheet, and also a fibrous microcarrier. So again, to really provide a customer with kind of a spectrum of different sample types that may work best for their cells in culture conditions. And then from that, we can provide assistance with any additional details related to the experimental design or scale up, depending on the overall performance that they've received. And this isn't our true sample kit. These are a variety of samples that we have prepared at Matrix Food Technologies. But this is showing an example of what to expect if you were to contact Matrix Food Technology and ask for a sample kit. You get vials of a variety of different microcarriers, 5 different microcarriers, and then we would provide the guides and information on how to proceed based on our internal recommendations of working and validating these different microcarriers. Here's some examples of what we would like to see on our microcarriers when we send them out. These are all our internal R&D samples that, again, we run internally in order to validate and understand their performance. And so we've seen cell attachment and alignment along different fibers in our scaffolding, which you can see on the left there. The cells kind of align with and follow along the path of the fibers within the scaffold. In the center are some of our round microbeads, and they almost look like little basketballs, but they have cells attached, and you can see them established and spread out and really forming these long muscle-like structural components. So these are C2, C12 cells. They're muscle cell line. They're kind of the workhorse of the field. They're kind of the tried and true control cell line that they're easy to grow. They're very effective at showing a representative way that a muscle cell may attach to these microcarriers. And then along the right hand side, you can see some of our more textured microcarriers with the cells attached, and many of them are completely confluent. Aside from that more conventional cell line in-house, we do have chicken myoblasts, which are shown here, attaching to some of our textured microbeads again. Our serum-free cells, these grew and they attached and were starting to cover these microcarriers. This is an example of one of our micro sheets. Again, these are all different scales. Intentionally to kind of protect some information about our microcarriers that, again, we'd be happy to share once the conversation continues, if anyone is interested in our different products. And then also evidence of differentiation. So we're really seeing the expansion of the microtubules on these different microcarrier surfaces. And again, this is one of our micro sheets, really showing the variety of cell types and growth conditions that we've been able to test with high performance internally, that I would hope we would also see in customers' hands as well, and have seen. I'm going to dive a little bit into some of the research that we perform, and this can be optimizing carrier to carrier transfer. So on some of our microcarriers, we've grown them to confluence, we've added empty microcarriers, and then have actually seen those empty microcarriers become populated with new cells from the already seeded microcarriers. So this microcarrier transfer is important when trying to build cell biomass without overwhelming or overtaxing the current growth conditions. So if this is a bioreactor and you want to keep cells proliferating and growing, you might start with a smaller amount of microcarrier and cells. Once those are established, throw an empty microcarrier and just continue to grow and expand that population, for example. Again, optimizing seeding methodology. So there's a number of methods that we've used in-house on our different cell types, and this can include like different times of seeding versus agitation, different time points to evaluate our cells over in order to induce differentiation on our different microcarriers, whether they're adherent or I guess static scaffolds, or if there are more suspended microcarriers. Really understanding how to best optimize the seeding methodologies for these for the microcarriers that we're providing is critical. Also, the texture can be manipulated. Understanding how that texture affects cell attachment and yield is important. Porosity is a valuable component to being able to provide more cell mass per microcarrier, and that's something we're currently investigating. At this time, again, we have the textured microcarriers, which provide more surface area than just a purely round one, and that may be beneficial again for building this cell mass. Also understanding the cell and media requirements is important. So we talked about serum-free. I've worked with a few serum-free cell lines, just getting cells accustomed to a serum-free environment and still making sure that they attach and respond well to our different microcarriers has been important to understand, and we've run those experiments in-house. And also characterizing the different types of the growth and attachment and the way the different proteins contribute to that has helped inform the engineering of our variety of different materials. So again, looking at live dead cells, fluorescence imaging, understanding the establishment of the cells, perhaps their preference for certain areas. So I have this one image of the integrated growth promoting protein. So although this was kind of a work in progress product, I thought it was a really good example of showing how integrating a growth promoting protein can really induce the cells to behave a certain way. So you can kind of see there's like these lighter areas where this protein was present, and the cells seem to have a really high preference for those specific areas. So when we understand these different characteristics, we may be able to then further customize a scaffold where the cell directionality or orientation can be directed by having some of these growth promoting proteins in certain locations on the microcarrier. We also saw this chicken myoblast expansion on these different microcarriers. After 4 hours, cells were beginning to attach. They weren't quite established, still balled up, but after 3 days, the chicken myoblasts had persisted and continued to cover these microcarriers. So it's been exciting to see that even in as little as 4 hours, we can see cells start to attach to these microcarriers and begin to grow and proliferate over time. And we know scaffolds are important to the field. There are suspension cells available in the cultivated meat industry with different characteristics. However, there's no substitute for scaffolds, especially when it comes to this quote here, which was taken from Amy Rowett's lab at UCLA. She says that customized structure and textures help precursor muscle cells grow quickly and form muscle-like tissue. Edible microcarriers could reduce the expense, time, and waste required to produce cultured meat with a texture that appeals to consumers. And that's something I 100% agree with. The differentiation is a critical part of forming that type of structure and texture that a customer might be familiar with. And as long as the field is growing extensively based on hybrid products, the plant protein component is going to be important in order to make sure that the protein and even moisture profiles are comparable to the types of meat that a consumer might be familiar with. So I've shown too a few recent headlines about that always seem to be popping up, like when are these going to be available, where are they going to be labeled, how are they going to be regulated. But one thing is for sure is that the investment in this lab-grown meat industry continues to grow and expand. For example, here's some recent information, one of them provided by the recent Cell Agri newsletter, which we want to subscribe to. They have a lot of, we don't have any official affiliation with them, but it's a lot of useful up-to-date information on the field of cellular agriculture. And mentioned in a newsletter just this week was that the start of November 2022, the cell agricultural food field has raised approximately $1 billion across 45 deals this year. So if you're following the industry, sometimes one deal could be upwards of 40 or 50 million. And so the accumulation of this across the different startups and companies in this industry is contributing in no small way to this overall market that continues to grow. For example, to the Good Food Institute, which compiles a lot of information in the industry as far as the players in the field, the companies that are new and upcoming. They provided information that they expect that the value of cultivated meat industry will be between 250 billion and 500 billion US dollars by 2050. So that's a near, I guess I won't say entirely exponential, but continuously growing and expanding anticipated growth over time. And then from 2010 to quarter 3 of 2022, GFI had accumulated the numbers on the amount of dollars that has been invested in the cultivated meat industry, and they had that at $2.6 billion, and then 660 million year to date last year. So yeah, we expect even despite these supposed I don't know, financially difficult times and I don't know, threats that there might be recessions and other things. I think that cultivated meat will continue to prevail because it is a necessity over, I think, other types of technology. Again, this could be arguably that cultivated meat is high priority, but I think it is. As Eric mentioned earlier, this is an important component of food security for a number of different nations, and this is entirely on the radar and isn't going away. People need to eat, and with that, this source of alternative protein is going to be a promising way to do that. In fact, it says that also in the last little box there, that 2.6 billion of a 13.3 billion investment dollars in the alternative protein market overall was in the cultivated meat industry. So I definitely like to see those numbers a lot more competitive and maybe see that the numbers overall grow. And then within that, the cultivated meat takes over the other competing industries like fermented type of alternate protein environments, and then more like completely plant protein based ingredients. So with that, I'd like to definitely draw your attention to our team, our variety of different scientists. I think one of the important parts of the cultivated meat field is the variety of people that are needed in order to make it successful. And that's everyone from a cell biologist to a food scientist, to the people that raise the funding, to the people that help us do our jobs day to day, the people interacting with customers. And I think we do a really great job here having a team that is diverse in their skill sets and can really bring new ideas to the team so that we maintain our interest in this field and can hopefully transfer our knowledge and our excitement about the technology to the customers and clients that might be interested. And with that, thank you so much. Toda, a better future is possible. And I'm happy to answer any questions via email. And again, if you are interested in our 5 sample kit or other samples, please contact our sales team, and we can make sure to get some of those in your hands along with some usage guides and additional information on our products. Thank you so much. And yeah, I can take any questions.
Super. Heidi, thank you very, very much. I don't see any questions in the chat. But for those who are on the screen, if you want to open up your microphone and raise a question, I think Heidi will be happy to try to take those.
Hi, Heidi. This is Varun, co-founder of Seaspire, an alternative seafood startup from New Zealand. Hi, I wanted to actually chase up on, where do you see the industry going when it comes to needs of scaffolds for whole muscle cut products? There was a recent review of the industry, and with the emerging technologies like 3D printing, there's a speculation that maybe edible scaffolds might be eliminated as a scalable, as a need to scale the cultivated meat. Where do you see the particular component going as an industry requirement?
I think it still remains a challenge in the field to have a type of 3-dimensional structure, lacking the challenge of having vasculature to provide the nutrients and oxygen and gas exchanges to internal areas of a surface. So, for example, our scaffolds are rather thin, and they can be stacked in a way that would allow for that. But I think there's no substitute. Suspension cells, although they might work in some situations, at the end of the day, you just end up with a cell blob. You have cell mass, and that might be the goal of some industries. But being able to really provide the additional nutritional component, the protein profiles that are more familiar with traditional meat is only going to be able to be done in a 3-dimensional environment. I can see growth and expansion on a scaffold, perhaps, and then there's I think our situation is unique too, where we foresee our products being part of the final consumer product. So although you could remove the cells from the scaffolds, the idea is that the scaffold and the microcarrier would become part of this final product. So none of that additional step would be necessary. So that's the benefit. I know there's non-edible microcarriers and scaffolds out there, and maybe it's just to generate cell mass, but then once the cells are removed, they're losing a lot of those characteristics that are important to a 3-dimensional muscle cell or meat, including fat or other connective tissue. Oh, you're back on mute. I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry. I just have a follow-on question. Are there any, scale up production challenges for scaffolds, the processes that you have in place?
There's always challenges to doing something that's never been done before. But one great part of it though is that I think the interest and the passion of the people in the field is actually helping drive some of these challenges to something that is ultimately going to be successful. So for example, we pull a lot of technology and innovation from fields that maybe they don't traditionally come from. So electrospinning and electrospraying aren't entirely new technologies. Doing them at a large scale would be a new technology or a new challenge. But I do know, and we've already talked to customers, or not customers, companies that are doing just that, is understanding how do we get electrospraying and electrospinning up to a large scale, and they already have ideas, again, pulling information from other industries in order to say, look, we've seen this work in this type of environment, it should work for you with a few tweaks, and we can run smaller internal tests on what some of those tweaks might look like, and then use that to inform an ultimate design that might inform manufacturing. And I know too, I'm coming from a cell gene therapy environment too, that's a condition where there's huge number of bioreactive reactors, large scale, everything, 20-liter bags of media. And I think technology that exists currently in other industries are going to kind of be the linchpin to make sure that they translate into cultivated meat, again, with some tweaks just based on the requirements of the industry, particularly around food safety and other components that make it unique.
By the way, congratulations to you guys as well, as today we witness, Upside Foods getting the regulatory approval in the US. So definitely, opening up a lot more avenues for you guys also. Good luck. Thanks for the feedback, Heidi.
Yeah, it's very exciting. Nice to hear from you.
Hi, this is Eldar from Ale Farms. And I have a question about the sterilization method that you're using. Can you please elaborate which sterilization methods are you using?
Yes, without checking with my legal team, I'll keep it very vague. But I know that there's a number of sterilization techniques that are used in the food industry, and so we've narrowed down those ones to be only the ones that we will use, and that can include things like UV treatment, gamma sterilization, or autoclaving, which are compatible with a food ingredient that are also familiar to a cell culture lab. So yeah, the ones that are translatable across the food and the cell culture industries are the ones that we're targeting, again, just to make sure that when more established regulations come out, that we have a sterilization technique that's compatible with what the regulations will likely be.
And did that sterilization methods affected the structure of the microcarriers that you're using?
It can affect them. In some ways, we've seen better performance under different types of sterilization than others. So for example, pre-sterilization, our microcarrier won't work very well. Post-sterilization, it actually seems to help in some ways. On other configurations, we've seen the opposite. So again, I think having the benefit at Matrix is that we really have this variety of formats and surface treatments. So any number of those, so we say we have 5 formats and even just 2 surface treatments, that already gives us 10 things to test. And if we run them through 3 different sterilization methods, we're going to get a lot of information on the type of performance that we can expect under the different requirements for sterilization. So that's something that we do keep an eye on and test thoroughly internally.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Heidi, you do have another question in the chat.
Sure.
One of our, how the microcarrier to coil seating density is accounted in bioreactors. It means that all the cells adhered in the microcarriers and no cell losses are evident.
Microcarriers accounted in. I mean, there is cell loss expected. I think that's kind of a realistic situation in the environment. Not all cells will adhere. So what we'll do is look, for example, at the seating density, and then we can look at information such as the number of cells per microcarrier, and also in kind of a controlled closed environment, the cells that don't attach will form cell sheets, or you'll see a variety of dead cells. So that's actually one thing that helped kind of hone us into an ideal seating density that we recommend to customers. And that's when, those cell sheets start forming or we start seeing a lot of unattached cells. We've actually seeded too many cells. And actually reducing that number has increased the performance, because then there's less dead cells in the environment to cause stress to the cells that had attached and want to establish and use those available nutrients that would be in a bioreactor type of environment. So I would say, make sure I've answered this question. I would say, yeah, optimizing the cell seating density for the microcarrier would help prevent a lot of those cell losses. So what we recommend again is just first, like we'll send a kit, we'll send a variety, look for cell attachment and performance. If there's a microcarrier that seems to work particularly well with different cells in a media environment, then the next step would be to kind of scale it up, maybe into something like a 1 liter, 5 liter bioreactor level. Once that kind of scale up production and attachment and different cell features are understood, then scaling up from there would help provide additional information. So yeah, just optimizing for cell attachment and growth in these different environments is going to be important.
Okay, so great. All right. Well, thank you very much to all of you. Eric, do you want to say a few words to close this out?
No, just very happy that everybody was able to join us today and that we had an opportunity to share with you some of the advances that Matrix Food Technologies is making in the alternative protein, and in particular the cultivated meat space. We're excited for the future, and you know, obviously the news yesterday with Upside, although just the beginning, it is a positive development for this industry, and I think validates that this industry is here to stay.
Great. Okay, well, thanks to all of you, and hope you found the session worthwhile. We will follow up and get a recording of this session to everyone who participated as well. So thank you very much. Heidi, thank you as well for your presentation this afternoon, and the Matrix for making this information available to a wider audience. Peace.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.